So I was doing a keynote one time with a group of seasoned military spouses. So these are spouses who have been hanging out around the world traveling with their military spouse for 15, 20, 25, 30 years. And they had this theme in their conference around resilience. And I found out later from a couple of my previous clients who were in the audience, they were like, I was so annoyed that we were going to talk about resilience because everybody is like, oh, you're a military spouse. You're so resilient. And they were so frustrated by the word. And I started asking some questions. And so I was like, what frustrates you about it? And it was the offhanded nature of it. Like, yes, we're resilient, but it's like, but we have to work at it. It's not something that we just are. And so it was this whole interesting conversation around resilience. And I think it's one of those words that gets thrown around a lot and we're not quite sure what to do with it. And I have this great friend. Her name is Jenny Evans. She's actually a resiliency expert. She's an amazing keynote speaker. And she posted something a while back and I was like, you have to come on the show. You have to come on the show and talk about resilience and really what is going on in our minds as we're developing resilience. We've been talking about stories this month and the stories in our own mind and our inner narratives. And I think that is really where resiliency happens. So if you are here live, I would love to know your questions about resilience. How do you feel when people say resilience? And what does that mean for you? And I cannot wait for you to meet Jenny. She's so fun. She is fantastic. I'm so glad that she is joining us here today. Yay! Oh, wait, I didn't unmute you. That's my fault. If you ever doubted the show was live, here it is. Now you can go.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad that you are here. I always love any chance that I get to like talk to you in real life and in real time. It always makes me so happy. I would love for you to tell the people. I mean, I know you're a resiliency expert, you're a keynote speaker, you've spoken all around the world to amazing organizations and people. But tell us how you got here. How did you become this person and helping people through this type of work?
Big question. So I started out pursuing psychology, and one of my many part-time jobs was teaching fitness. But it wasn't really because I was very good at fitness. I actually had a dance background because I was so uncoordinated as a kid. My mom was like, "Oh, girl, you need help." So when I had to start learning just the basics of anatomy and physiology, and I started learning how the body works and how the body and the brain are interconnected, and the chemistry and the psychology are not separate. They affect each other. It was just this big head explosion. And I was like, okay, I want to do, performance psychology and exercise physiology. And so I help people go from feeling overworked, overwhelmed, overstressed, overstretched, overbooked, overmedicated, just over it, to on it, on fire, on purpose, and on your game. But it's really sort of grounded in, we all face a lot of stress and change and challenge and demands. And stress actually starts as a chemistry problem. And it's those chemical changes that then create the negative psychological side effects and stories that we're all dealing with. So it's funny, Jen, when you were like, stories come from our mind. I'm actually going to be talking about today how a lot of stories actually come from the chemistry of our body, which then affects our mind, which then affects our stories.
Absolutely. I love it. I cannot wait because there's so much about how our body knows and our mind is trying to interpret. And so I love where this is going. I'm so excited. So if you are listening live, I'm super curious if this is a new idea for you that our bodies have something in it, that is for us to learn. And sometimes people, when we talk about resilience, we like it's this word that's out there. And I have the way I like to define it, but I am not a resiliency expert. I just work around leadership where people have to be resilient. So tell me, what is your definition of resilience? How do you help people first understand what are we talking about?
Yeah. Okay, I agree. The word resilience is very triggering for
Hmm.
a lot of people. So there are so many different ways to define it. I have three ways I like to define resilience. So resilience is your ability to recover from stress more quickly and more effectively. So
Hmm.
hit the reset button and you're prepared for that next stressor that is coming your way instead of just getting nailed by stress and you get punched in the face and you're like, oh, and then like, you haven't recovered and then you get socked in the gut and you're just like, okay, that hurt. But if you can recover from those stressful events, stress is not cumulative. You're hitting the reset button, you're ready to handle it. You hit the reset, you're ready to handle it.
Hmm.
I also define resilience as your ability to increase your threshold for stress so that you can just successfully deal with a lot more before your stress response is triggered. And then finally, it's a series of behaviors, training behaviors that can be expanded through practice and training. And I have a whole suite of different micro strategies to be more resilient, both physiologically as well as psychologically.
Oh, so, to make sure we're all understanding, we've got three parts of this. One is that it's your ability to handle stress when it comes at you. Two, to build that, your capacity because stress isn't going away. And I don't know about you, but the older I get, I feel like more comes at me.
Oh, yeah.
As I have three kids entering college this year, one still at home, some parents who are starting to, like all of that is starting to come and, running a business. So there's
Just
that, the ability to handle more. And then the ability to, I think what you're saying is like pick the right strategy. Pick the right thing that helps you do the first two steps. Is that kind of where you're going with this?
well, and that you're not necessarily okay. So we can't control, to your point, a lot of the stress in our lives, and
Mhm,
it's never going to go away. Your job is never going to ask less of you. Your
mhm.
family is never going to ask less of you. A lot of that you cannot control, but you can control your resilience to stress. And if you
Absolutely.
train, you can become more resilient.
Mhm. I love that. I love that. That training aspect of it. I think there's so many parts of that. And I want to hear what you're saying about how the body chemistry impacts our stories, because one of the things that I work with leaders about is how to manage that story.
Yeah.
And that is something you can train. You can train that every thought that you have is true, and you can train yourself to think differently. But I'm really interested in how does the body chemistry impact the way we interpret what's happening to us?
Yeah.
Tell me about
Okay,
that.
get ready. All right. So anytime we're
Totally like,
exposed to stress, our body produces cortisol.
mhm.
And cortisol affects which parts of our brain we actually have access to. So the very first part of our brains that developed are what I call our primitive caveman brain.
Yeah.
Okay. I like to call this part of our brain Sneaky Pete. Okay.
I love it.
So
I call it Lucy Lizard, so I love it.
we've all got our own little nickname for this
Yep.
person.
Mhm.
So this is your fight or flight response. This, you get very emotional, you get very reactive. This part of your brain is hardwired to be negative, defensive, fearful. This is where, self-doubt comes in. We're also just get really pulled into like this present moment because Sneaky Pete's about our survival. Like he knows we're uncomfortable right now and he wants to do anything possible to just get rid of the dis-ease. He doesn't really even care about long-term future consequences. And he hates change. Okay, Sneaky Pete loves comfort, safety,
Mhm.
security of habit and routine. And when you think about the amount of change that we've all been through, and change triggers the stress response. Even when we want to make change ourselves and we understand that it's really good for us, it still triggers that stress response. And so
Mhm.
when we're under stress, Sneaky Pete takes control of our brain. Now, I want you to notice there's no capacity for logic, thought, or reasoning. He's just very emotional and very reactive.
Mhm.
Okay, as our brains developed, the neocortex grew on top. And I like to think of this as our advanced brain or like Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang. So This is logic, this is reasoning, this is self-discipline and willpower. It's our connection to purpose, getting beyond just survival, but more so survival for what.
Mhm.
But this part of our brain is very expensive from an energy management perspective. And
Hmm.
the thing is that every time we experience stress and the body produces cortisol, Sneaky Pete completely hijacks this part of our brain. And so we often think that we're being very logical and rational, but in fact, about 95% of our behaviors are really driven by emotion. And
Mhm.
then we will actually create a story that helps us to justify why we made that emotional decision in the first place.
All the
So,
time. All the time.
yeah. So, when we're stressed out and Sneaky Pete is in charge, a lot of the stories that we create about what's happening and about future consequences come from this place of fear and negativity and
Mhm.
self-doubt and this big extreme emotion, the world's on fire. um, and we don't have access to that more logical reasoning part of the brain that can really like zoom out and look at the big picture and
Mhm.
also see that during times of stress, yeah, it's uncomfortable and it's icky, but we also learn and grow, and we can create stories around stressful events that this is really a learning opportunity. And I'm going to expand my skill set once I get through this. I'm going to have so much strength, I'm going to have more confidence in myself. So like, I've really simplified things, but in a
Sure.
nutshell, the chemistry of our body because of stress shuts on and off different parts of
Mhm.
our brain, and those two different parts of our brain create very, very different storylines.
Absolutely. Well, when I think about when some of the most controversial things that I will say when I'm working inside an organization or doing a keynote is that all decisions are emotional decisions. That's where they start. We can't get to the Sheldon, I call the CEO, the CEO executive suite of our brain unless it goes through that. And so, in what I'm hearing you say is also we have to close this stress cycle and get Sneaky Pete to calm down a little bit before we can get that CEO part of our brain back online, before Sheldon comes back online. So, what are some of the things that we can do that actually helps us recognize, oh, I am in Sneaky Pete. I am in Lucy Lizard right now. Because I think that's part of the problem is that we don't recognize I am operating out of this base fear that is fighting for love, safety, and belonging all the time. How
Yeah.
do we notice that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is when you're experiencing stress, the stress response is designed to fuel your body for either fighting or fleeing. So,
Mhm.
one of the micro strategies that I talk about is do a micro burst. 30 to 60 seconds of intense physical activity actually burns off cortisol and those stress hormones, and then produces things like endorphins, endocannabinoids, brain derived neurotrophic factor, human growth hormone. So it changes our chemistry so that we can actually have access to the rational part of our brain that can even assess, am I even stressed out? Because when Sneak Pete's in charge, he's all reaction and he's just in the moment. And so
Mhm.
doing a microburst is one of the fastest ways to change our chemistry. So that's always like number one, change the chemistry of your body and your brain. But the other thing that we can do too is when we notice that we're being very reactive and you feel that increase in heart rate and like things just kind of start speeding up. We're just being very reactive, emotions start getting high. One of our advanced brain's superpower is its connection to purpose.
Mm.
So when I say purpose, it can be okay. So my purpose statement, if I'm going to simplify it, is to help myself and others push the envelope and to enjoy what's inside. And so
Mm.
for me, like pushing the envelope means we're going to have to get out of our comfort zone. We're going to have to do things that we've never done before. We're going to have to do things that scare the pee out of us. Okay. And that's how we grow. And that's how we get stronger. And how amazing is that? Just totally energizes me. So when I'm clear on my purpose and I
Mhm.
create these stories about stress, that it's an opportunity for growth, it's how I'm going to learn. These stories then help me get through these hard times. But if I lose sight of my purpose, it all just becomes rather meaningless. And then I'm overwhelmed with the
Mhm.
stress. The fear comes in, the negativity comes in, the pessimism comes in. I will start to blame other people. I will rationalize. I will minimize. I will justify. I will distort the truth because Sneaky Pete just sees what he wants to see. He hears what he wants to hear, and he just blocks out everything else. When we tap into purpose, it allows us to like step back and see the bigger picture and to
Mhm.
create stories that are really aligned with the truth. They're aligned with our values and they really take us where we want to go. And they give us that passion and persistence and that grit and that resilience.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's the developing the resilience that is healthy. Like, there are healthy coping strategies and not healthy coping strategies, and the
Oh, yeah.
resilience, I always think of that as when, like you said, you've increased your capacity to handle things because that is how you do it in a healthy way. Like, we can't live like that for the long term. We can't live in that fight or flight space with cortisol and adrenaline just rushing through all the time. Not only
Mhm.
does it physically destroy us, we literally just can't manage it. Like, it's too much. It's la, 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 la. It feels like that runaway train.
Yeah.
So last week, so I'm hosting a retreat next week for women leaders called the Joyosity Retreat, and registration was closing last week. So that's when everybody's, making decisions. And so I'm just like, is it gonna, I'm in that stressful state. And then I got to the point where it was like, oh, I'd almost met my goal. But I was feeling just overwhelmed and stressed, that kind of speed up response. And I have a set of stairs that out that door. And I was like, I even thought of you and I was like, I'm going to run up and down those stairs. And just like ran up and down the stairs really fast. And they have a texture to them. So it's like I took my shoes off so I could feel it. That also helps me. Like, your body gets excited. And I also reached out to a friend and I was like, why am I doing this? Will you remind me? I know that I know, but I like could not get my head there. And just reaching out to a friend to say, remind me of this. And she was like, you want to transform global workplace culture so everybody has joy at work. And this is why you're doing that. And these women who are coming, and like she just this like text after text. And it was so helpful. And I think that's just an example of what you're talking about that immediately started to calm me and remind me that I could then do the next thing. But it had to be both. Like, the story that I was telling myself was like, this is never going to work. This isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And
Nobody's going to come. This is
nobody,
stupid. They hate it. I suck. This sucks. I should just
absolutely.
totally throw in the towel.
Right. I'm just going to call
But
the people
when,
who've already paid and cancel. Like, I was there.
yeah, but when you tap into purpose, the story is it doesn't matter how many people I
Exactly.
touch. It's that I get to do the work that I know I'm meant to do. And if I get to impact 5 people, that's 5 people. If I get to impact 8 people, and
Mhm.
these are the 8 people that are supposed to be there.
Mhm.
And this is not about, you know, am I going to get, how many likes do I get? How many, like,
Yeah.
just external validation?
Mhm.
Knowing that you get to do the work that is deeply meaningful and fulfilling to
Mhm.
you. When we tap into that, that's a whole different energy where you're like, I
Absolutely.
don't care how many people show up. I am going to serve my face off and it is going to be amazing.
Yeah. Well, and it started me like thinking about the ripple effect because I am equipping these women who are leading in several different types of organizations to create a place where other people can come to work and do their purpose. Because
Mhm.
please don't make me do spreadsheets and accounting. Like, that is not my purpose.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
good Lord, do I love my bookkeeper. And I'm so glad that that's his purpose,
Yeah.
and helping other people, that it doesn't all have to be the same purpose, but being able to connect what I am uniquely gifted to do to the work that I am doing, whether I'm inside an organization or not, is that key story that we have to remind ourselves on when we get that Slack message. It's just like, we have to come back to, why am I doing this? And that's what's so
Yeah.
powerful about it. That helps me face the next Slack message that comes. And that's that resilience piece of increasing your capacity that I think you were talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, I just looked at the time. Wow. Okay. Every time I'm like, I'm going to get better at timing. I need to give up that story. I am so grateful for you sharing your expertise, inviting us into your world and the body chemistry that's involved in this. Will you just tell the people how to connect with you, how to find you? You've got a little bit here about igniting your purpose. Tell us the things, Jenny.
Yeah. If you go to my website, jennyevans.com, it's all there. So I do have an Ignite Your Purpose program that is for individuals, as well as teams and organizations. I also have a YouTube channel where we put out really highly produced videos about every 2 weeks that are just strategies, tools for resilience, performance, confidence, women's leadership. I'm on the socials. I've got a lot of free resources. But if you just go check out jennyevans.com, you could find a link to my purpose course, keynotes. It's all there.
Great. And if you aren't following Jenny's videos, I just got to say, what are you doing with your life? Because they are so fun. And this is one of the things that I think we connect over, is the idea that teaching this type of thing and helping people access this information and resources does not have to be boring, and that actually humor helps. And I love them, and that you are so wise and brilliant and an expert in your field, and that you come at this with a level of joy that I, as somebody who loves joy, appreciate. So that it's not all, it's so accessible and so fun. And I just appreciate that about your work. So thank you for putting it out into the world.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, God, if you're not doing things with joy, why are you even doing them? So
I completely
I'm
agree.
serious about being serious, and I'm serious about having fun.
This is true. This is true. I thank you so much for your time. Thank you all for being here. Next week, Paul David Mather will be here, and we are moving into next month talking about communication. And I'm very excited about engagement, and what does it look like to engage your people and start by engaging yourself. And so that's what we're going to have a great discussion about. So join us next week. We are live every week at 1 p.m. Eastern. And so we will see you there. Thanks again, Jenny.
Thanks, Jen.
Bye, everybody. So let me put my coach hat on for just a sec. Don't just leave this here. Take a moment. What did you learn? What's your next tiny action step? Share this episode with someone and tell them. Connect with us to keep this conversation going. As always, I'm Jen Whitmer. Thank you for listening to Joyosity. I don't take for granted that your earballs have a lot of information coming at you. Please take a moment to rate and subscribe. It really helps more people join us in creating positive culture with complex people. So work is a joy, people are whole, and organizations flourish. Can't wait for you to join us next week.